What's good, YouTube? Can I do the CMO and talk about one card for an entire 10 minutes? You're about to find out right now. Amorphage Sloth, an amazing tech card in Pendulum Magicians in my opinion. Now, let's go over the pros and cons of its effects first, and then what it does in the meta versus the meta. And it's probably obvious at this point, its main use is that you want to side it in against Zoo, if not already be maining it, since Zoo is so prevalent. But it also stops other strategies. So, it has a positive and negative scale effect. Its positive is that while you control an Amorphage monster, neither player can add cards from their deck to their hand except by drawing them. That's pretty good if you're consistently going to be keeping Amorphages out, but it's highly unlikely because in at least Pendulum Magicians, you're going to have to hard draw your Sloths, so you would have to have 2 Sloths and Pendulum 1 out. Now, here's the negative effect that'll kick in much more often. Once per turn, during your standby phase, tribute 1 monster or destroy this card. That's pretty rough, so you're often losing the scale if you scale. But what you're really playing it for is this. He is a monster that neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except Amorphage monsters by his effect. Oh man, so you're blocking off the entire extra deck. There's no clause in there that's stopping Xyz, Synchro, etc. It stops the Link summons too, it stops the Fusion summons, it stops all the summons from the extra deck. Now, you may be scratching your head and saying, John, you know, I like the card and all, but there's a card that just does this better. It's called Vanity's Fiend. Well, there's a few things in Pendulum Magicians that Sloth does for you that Vanity's Fiend will not. The first being that it does act as a low scale, in case your hand plays out for an OTK, which does happen actually quite often in Pendulum Magicians. I've been playing them a ton. You have so many damage tricks, you have so much potential in it. Yes, Amorphage Sloth in Pendulum Magicians acts as a low scale, which your deck's actually very thirsty for. I was going to bring this up actually later in the conversation, but I actually just want to talk about this now. You have a total of, in a sense, most decks, 7 low scales, maybe 8 depending on your build, but typically it's 3 purple, 3 wisdom, and 1 oath dragon. You have different builds, of course, you have different duels, but it acts as a low scale, which your deck is thirsty for, and it has no restrictions on what you can special summon out or do with the rest of your turn. That's actually very handy that its scale effect doesn't choke you like you might think it would have. So, with your lack of low scales, Amorphage Sloth is a much needed boost, which is almost where it can fit in the main deck. You have True Dracos running around, yes, but there's so many Zodiac players that this card just goes in naturally. This card fits into your deck to where if you're playing against True Draco, well, heck, just put it in the low scale. It's not going to restrict any of the monsters that you're probably running because most monsters you're running are level 4 above, if not all of them. So the fact that it does have that low scale attribute actually gives it main deck potential within your deck, although I would still suggest siding it personally, and that's what I do. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Zodiacs. Zodiacs have outs to this, unlike Vanity's Fiend, that are extra. Like, when they play against Vanity's Fiend, they're looking for a field wipe or a negate. They're looking for Forbidden Chalice if they still play it, which is actually highly unlikely. There's very few players still with Zoos playing that card, mainly because of Hammer Kong and how good Hammer Kong is at restricting how Forbidden Chalice works. So, Sloth actually works very, very well against the Zoo, but they can kaiju it, unlike Vanity's Fiend. There's the first chink in its armor. But I've taken a lot of games, and this isn't, oh, I've won because of this card against this deck so many times. This is a natural floodgate against them to where they do have to use something on it. They have to find a way to take care of it. And if you're running other cards like Avian too, it not only acts as a low scale to help you get out Avian, it can come out with Avian and be just even better. You can fade the field wipes, unlike the Vanity's Fiend, since you can't Pendulum summon the Vanity's Fiend, you know? It's got that nice effect here of cannot be special summoned. Amorphage Sloth has that advantage. Although there's still going to be insane hands in Pendulum Magicians where you could end up tribute summoning him. It's very often with 3 Joker that you're going to be summoning Joker in your deck. So that's another place Sloth gets the advantage in the Magician Pendulums. You're Pendulum summoning it out, and oftentimes, if you happen to draw it, with Avion. Again, these are all preferences of builds, but I'm trying to cover as many different places as possible where you want to see Sloth. Now, the next place where I really love seeing Sloth, and you know, even at 1, they're drawing Max C far more often than they should. When you draw Gofu and they Max C, it's one of the worst feelings in the world, especially if you're facing a Zoo player. Except for when you get to tribute Gofu for a Sloth. It's a level 6 as well. Now, again, this is a position where I personally feel Vanity's Fiend would be better, but it just doesn't mesh with the Pendulum Magician deck as well. So, Amorphage Sloth does give you hope. It gives you this ability to set up and play, and you can have backup in the Pendulum Magician deck, but you basically have had to get some way to your Time Pendulum Graph, the trap card, to protect him. And then you're hoping further that they don't just kaiju it. But on Max C, with Max C, it's an amazing card to just be able to put out there. I want to say, I may be sounding a little harsh, but I'm doing my best not to overhype this card that I'm very excited about. Next up on this, we do have the card we mentioned earlier, Forbidden Chalice. Forbidden Chalice, again, a card that you will see in some side decks that takes care of this. It also takes care of Fiend, but I just wanted to mention the kinds of troubles you'll be facing with your Amorphage Sloth. You'll be facing Kaijus, you'll be facing against negates. There's so much that can do it. And next, we have the final thing I wanted to talk about. Yes, it's not a free resource like Goliath, but it is pretty free in terms of the market right now. Despite not even getting a Megaton reprint, you can pick up your playset real cheap to try out. It's at a cost of almost nothing to you. You can get yourself a set shipped pretty much around $2 if you're looking at TCG Player, where you have to buy 3 from sellers, or you might be able to tack it on to orders that you're buying already. So, it's a budget option for you guys. It's a really amazing card, in my opinion. And no, I couldn't last the whole 10 minutes. I'm sorry. I failed you, Simo. But this is just my take on a card in Pendulum Magicians that I wanted to tech highlight, that I really enjoyed. I think Amorphage Sloth is very good despite the drawbacks you might face. There's a lot of times where you just summon it out, Zoo goes Thoroughblade, pitch a card, look at their hand, set a few. The few usually don't affect him, or you can Time Pendulum Graph and pop whatever back row is set, and he just does his job like the mans he is. Thanks for watching, guys.